Let's kick things off by digging into the first massive bombshell that completely changed the direction of this entire case. For weeks on end, without a break, the main story regarding the tragic vanishing of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie relied on a guess that seemed to make sense, but was actually dead wrong. Most folks, including plenty of early news pundits, figured some random, sloppy crook had smashed into the quiet Tucson home, then totally freaked out when he unexpectedly bumped into the elderly resident and somehow let things spiral out of control until it turned into a full-blown kidnapping. But now, elite former FBI agents Jim Fitzgerald and Greg Rogers have stepped up to completely tear that theory to shreds. Using their intense breakdown of criminal behavior, they laid out a solid case showing exactly how the mindset and tactics differ completely. When you compare a spur-of-the-moment crime against one driven by specific evil planning. Looking at the step-by-step analysis Rogers provided, your typical burglary is all about getting in quick and finding the easiest way to do it. A regular thief looking for cash is hunting for a super simple target, like a back window left cracked open, a garage door up, or a house that looks totally dark and vacant. Their main goal is just to slip inside the building without making a sound, snatch up whatever electronics or jewelry they can grab fast, and get out of there without ever seeing or touching a single person. But a specific abduction works on a totally different and way more dangerous level of thinking. That takes serious planning, watching the victim closely beforehand, and a scary amount of preparation. The person behind this didn't just accidentally find this house while walking down the street. They zeroed in on that exact address with deadly accuracy. That way of looking at it brings us to the most important part of the timeline, specifically when the break-in happened. The intruder forced their way in right around 2 o'clock in the morning. For a seasoned profiler, that timestamp isn't just a small detail. It's a massive neon sign pointing right at the attacker's real reason. If a guy is only interested in snatching material goods, the absolute stupidest time to smash into a house is in the middle of the night. At 2 a.m., the whole block is pitch black, but more importantly, the people who live there are almost definitely inside fast asleep, and pros who steal stuff do everything they can to avoid running into people. They much rather hit a place on a weekday afternoon, right when the owners are stuck at the office or out running errands. This attacker made a conscious choice to break in at 2 in the morning, right when those suburban streets were silent and all the neighbors' lights were out. The guy made a very specific, calculated move. They knew for a fact the elderly woman would be there sleeping. That timing proves without a doubt that the goal was never about clearing out the living room of valuables. The main mission from the start of this horror show was to ambush, dominate, and snatch a living person. The intruders moved in at 2 in the morning to make sure she was groggy and completely cut off. They ensured she couldn't scream for assistance or summon the police before they vanished. Retired profiler Jim Fitzgerald points to a chilling detail in the wake of the crime that backs up this theory. Specifically, the complete lack of interest in the huge cash bounty. Almost immediately following the brutal snatching, loved ones and officials announced a massive $1 million prize for tips that would bring her home. Had this been a sloppy break-in by some frantic junkie or a petty crook hunting for fast cash, that 7-figure sum would have almost definitely triggered a bite. Someone in it for the money would try to broker a deal or reach out through encrypted channels. They might even dump her somewhere visible to grab the loot while dodging a life sentence. But that massive pile of money was ignored completely. Fitzgerald notes that this ghosting behavior tells detectives everything they need to know. The abductor walked away from a literal goldmine. That stillness screams to the Bureau that cash isn't driving this horror show. This heartless predator isn't interested in your dollars. His goal is total dominion over Nancy Guthrie, keeping her trapped and tormenting her celebrity daughter. Plus, the rush of pulling off such a bold move is worth way more to this sicko than $1 million ever could be. Since the feds have scrapped the accidental robbery idea, we have to look the ugly truth of that evening right in the face. If the guy smashing into that sleepy Tucson residence didn't want cash or diamonds, cops are stuck with a nightmare scenario, he entered that home just to take a life. That fact pushes the probe toward the scary possibility of a proxy crime. Ex-CIA and FBI veteran Tracy Walder shared her take on this exact situation recently. Her read on the case is blunt and absolutely gut-wrenching for the relative. Drawing on her background, she notes the intentional nature of the hit, the picked spot, and the surgical execution of the grab eliminate any average thug. A standard burglar chasing a quick buck doesn't have the focus, the chill, or the long-term planning required to execute a snatch and grab this big. They can't move through a dark house without tripping sensors or leaving a mess of DNA behind. Walter is convinced this commando-style operation reveals a specific profile. We're hunting a suspect driven by a deep, unshakable fixation. This creep didn't just choose an 84-year-old lady from a directory. No, he spent weeks studying her every move before launching a perfect raid. That angle flips the entire script of the search. It moves the focus off the senior citizen and puts it squarely on her famous kin. It implies the real object of this hatred isn't necessarily the great-grandmother dragged from her sheets, but her superstar daughter. News anchor Savannah Guthrie, being a household name who beams into millions of living rooms daily, she obviously pulls in a giant crowd nationwide. However, that kind of visibility brings a heavy, perilous shadow. Appearing on screen every dawn acts as a magnet for unstable individuals detached from the real world. Experts like Walter figure the abductor is likely just some totally unhinged viewer, someone nursing a serious vendetta against the news host. That rage might stem from some imaginary slight they took personally, maybe a hot-button story that rubbed them the wrong way, or a total fantasy scenario cooked up in their disturbed brain. On the flip side, the perp could be a manic stalker fixated on the TV personality, a parasocial bond that morphed into a dangerous, unstoppable need. No matter which nightmare scenario is true, the core reason stays identical. It shows a desperate need to control, hurt, or totally ruin the famous figure. That implies the abductor doesn't see the older mom as a real person. In their eyes, she represents nothing more than leverage. She acts as a high-stakes chip in a much broader contest, a sick mind game directed squarely at her celebrity daughter. To get why this happened, consider what life is actually like for big stars here. Savannah Guthrie stays protected within a tight, always-watch safety zone. Being a major news host, she travels with expert bodyguards everywhere. You bet, her main residences have the fanciest surveillance gear available. Plus, every move she makes is scripted to lower any possible risks. A crazy fanatic trying to hit her straight on would hit a brick wall, guns would be drawn, and cuffs slapped on before they got within 10 feet. Realizing there was no way to breach that fortress of protection, the vicious criminal came up with a truly heartless alternative plan. They figured since touching their main objective was out of the question, they would just skirt around all those heavy defensive protocols. They aimed for the weakest link in her private world instead, choosing to cause ultimate mental anguish by snatching her old mom from bed. Although the idea of an indirect hit on the TV star holds a lot of water, a different top agent from the Bureau suggests another scary option. Ex-analyst Jim Clemente thinks detectives need a totally fresh perspective. He proposes that the real reason for this creepy break-in could be completely unrelated to Savannah or her TV fame. Rather, Clemente claims the sinister goal comes from the sheer frailty of the prey itself, at least in the eyes of an experienced hunter. Choosing to attack usually comes down to weighing the odds. Bad guys look for the easiest route. They hate a challenge. They avoid pushback and definitely don't want cops or neighbors noticing. So when a criminal scopes out the details of this midnight snatch, they don't see a star's mom, they just see an easy mark. To really grasp this horrific point of view, we need to examine the sad reality of the victim's everyday life. Nancy Guthrie is 84, has trouble moving around, and depends on a pacemaker to keep her ticker going daily. Plus, she stayed solo in a regular home on a dim, silent Tucson road. No big dog to scare folks off, and no obvious fancy alarm setups. Watching over the edges of her yard. To most decent folks with a heart, this looks like a sweet old lady living out her final years in quiet peace. However, for a cold-blooded predator lurking in the dark, that specific situation looks like a golden ticket to strike. It means a victim who can't run for help and lacks the muscle to fend off a violent intruder. Plus, there is no husband or roommate nearby to hear the noise and call 911. The total solitude and the frailty of an 84-year-old grandmother mark her as an incredibly easy target for anyone wanting to do harm without a fight. This leads detectives to ask one terrifying question. How on earth did the masked man learn such intimate facts about her daily life? How were they aware she was solo, physically weak, and didn't have a solid alarm setup? Clemente notes that bad guys don't just stumble onto that intel, they have to hunt for it. That implies the crook spent hours scouting the block and keeping tabs on her place. Yet Clemente pushes this scary idea even further down the rabbit hole, proposing a disturbing reason for how the assailant got the inside scoop. He suspects the abductor could be someone hired for a standard service job. Consider how many unknown people we let walk right into our personal space every year. The culprit might be the guy who showed up to repair a drip under the sink, a landscaper cutting the grass, an electrician, a pool guy, or just a regular delivery driver. These common workers get authorized, totally unsuspicious, valid permission to march up the driveway and peek into our sanctuaries. A creep in that line of work gets a free pass to scope things out, memorize the floor plan in their head, and size up just how defenseless the resident really is. They would spot that there is no dog bowl outside and no cameras watching, and see how weak the lady is when she signs for a package. If that person already had twisted, dangerous urges brewing inside, a quick maintenance visit gave them all the info required to plot a nightmare. They noticed a silent road, a lonely senior, and zero protection. So they chose to exploit that weakness the moment the lights went out on the block. While cops keep sifting through the physical clues found at the house, there is a vital part of the probe centered on the attacker's mindset. To really grasp the horror of this midnight break-in, we need to examine the actions caught on the porch camera. Former Federal Bureau of Investigation Behavioral Unit Chief Mary Ellen O'Toole just gave a brilliant and scary analysis of that security video. When a pro like her reviews a tape, she sees way more than just the outfit or steps. She hunts for subtle cues that show the bad guy's true emotions right then. Her findings from those few seconds at the door stunned the police force. The scariest part was not a weapon or some aggressive lunge. It was a detail totally missed by regular folks. Based on her professional read of the situation, the intruder showed a creepy absence of any feelings. He was not jittery, did not hurry, and looked totally calm under the lights. If an average Joe tried to snatch an 84-year-old lady from her house at night, they would be shaking in their boots with anxiety. Usually, a perpetrator's hands will tremble, they gasp for air, and they keep glancing back in sheer terror. Yet this particular intruder exhibited absolutely zero evidence of those typical bodily responses. He remained on the veranda, maintaining a terrifyingly steady composure while motioning with a calculated, fluid cadence that totally contradicted the brutal nature of the crime he was committing. Expert analysis suggests this eerie absence of fear points toward a pair of horrifying possibilities. This heartless predator is either a veteran criminal who has pulled off comparable felonies on numerous occasions, or he has spent months painstakingly visualizing every step of this kidnapping within his thoughts. He likely ran this sick scenario through his head so frequently that stepping onto her property felt like just another Tuesday. In his mind, the event had effectively already taken place. All that remained was merely acting out the finale in the real world. That scary behavioral assessment brings us straight to the next alarming feature of his mentality. It clearly distinguishes him from your average criminal looking for a quick payday. The profiler highlights a very troubling parallel connecting this mystery man to a notorious historic murderer. She drew a line between his hunger for the spotlight and the behavior of the infamous Zodiac killer. That killer became known for spreading fear across the entire country, doing so not only via his grisly murders, but also by using his persistent, cocky correspondence sent to regional press outlets and police departments. He loved the press frenzy his brutality created, desiring global recognition while watching communities freeze in terror. Agents from the Bureau believe the person who snatched the victim shares that same egocentric thought process. This plot was never designed to be a silent deal worked out in the shadows. That clear desire for spectators explains precisely why the abductor decided to mail his starting terms straight to major broadcast networks and celebrity gossip sites. Your standard crook looking for a fast payout of several $1 million. would usually reach out to the rich relatives via secure lines to haggle in private. Their goal is the cash, not the glaring attention of a nationwide broadcast. However, this perpetrator essentially rolled out the red carpet for the press. He shared his requirements intentionally to force the globe to witness his handiwork so he can feel dominant. He needs to believe he matters, a sensation his sad, regular existence never provided him. Above all, this sick person is dying to watch the famous anchor, pleading for her mom's safety while bathed in the glow of the studio lamps. His aim is to degrade a high-profile figure and make the authorities jump through hoops for the world to see. You can bet this felon is parked on a couch watching the screen at this very moment. He is likely glued to the coverage, stroking his vanity while he bides his time. Even with all that mental rehearsal and the apparently perfect handling of the midnight snatch, nobody is flawless. The second a bad actor leaves their imaginary world and actually steps foot onto the scene of the crime, errors are bound to happen, and those tiny slips are precisely what the agents are searching for today. An ex-analyst claims the perpetrator committed a huge error that might just crack the case wide open. Although the invader took great pains to hide his prints using heavy hand coverings, black gear, and a warm face covering, he messed up big time. The balaclava he picked out for the job failed to conceal his entire head. The fabric left his lips and chin open to the elements. That particular oversight represents a massive win for the crime lab team. Since his lips were uncovered, the suspect was undoubtedly respiring heavily, spraying invisible spit droplets and potentially leaving a massive biological jackpot right there on the porch. On top of that, detectives managed to snag a tossed glove found exactly 2 miles from where the crime went down. Lab results just confirmed that piece of clothing holds genetic traces from an unidentified male subject. By cross-referencing potential DNA evidence from the residence with the genetic markers extracted from that glove, police are going full throttle with a game-changing tool called genetic genealogy to crack this case wide open. We are talking about the exact same high-tech forensic science approach that finally caught the infamous Golden State Killer after decades. Agents are uploading that John Doe profile to ancestry sites, hunting for second cousins, and mapping out a huge family tree that should lead them right to the kidnapper's door. While the top-tier lab techs burn the midnight oil analyzing those key biological samples, tech experts at the FBI are ripping apart the porch cam video frame by frame. The team is scouring the feed for a totally different type of rock-solid physical tell. When the perp stood under the harsh glare of the porch lights, shifting his weight and fixing his stance, seconds before he kicked in the door, his dark outfit rode up just a tiny bit. During that split-second slip, the high-def lens caught something crucial. The clip exposed a partial tattoo inked on the attacker's skin. To seasoned detectives and gang unit vets, visible ink is basically a permanent roadmap pointing at a specific guy. Body art serves as a walking resume that spills the beans on a person's history and turf. Feds are running high-end enhancement tools to scrub every pixel of that short clip. The goal is to clear up the fuzz and rebuild the exact pattern of the artwork. They are looking for regional shading, prison styles, or gang signs that could instantly shrink the suspect list. Even if the piece is a total custom job, it still gives the investigation a huge leg up. Police can blast that sharpened photo out to hundreds of tattoo shops all over the state. Lastly, the third big clue that might blow this terrible case wide open is the specific gear the guy wore. During the entire length of the clip, the abductor is clearly rocking a 25-liter Ozark Trail outdoor rucksack. Right away, the detectives realize that this particular line of rough outdoor equipment is made and sold only at Walmart stores. That kicked off a huge scramble to dig through thousands of store sales receipts, but veteran cops know deep down that a careful planner like this, who mapped out such a smooth entry into the neighborhood, would probably not be dumb enough to leave a paper trail like a credit card swipe. So the dragnet has widened significantly to keep eyes on the shady underground world of online resale sites. Investigators are tearing through tons of recent sales logs on sites like eBay and Facebook Marketplace. The team is hunting for anybody who bought or flipped that specific 25-liter bag in the weeks before the crime. The perp likely figured grabbing his kit with a nameless cash deal on the wild used market would cut the digital cord completely. Yet every deal involves another person who saw something. Cops are hoping the person who unknowingly sold that specific 25-liter bag to the masked weirdo will spot the gear on the night news and ring up the station before time runs out. With the federal probe into the scary snatching of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie hitting crunch time, analysts have come to a scary agreement that connects the main ideas. Retired FBI profiler Greg McCrary, a guy who basically wrote the book on modern behavioral analysis, brought up the unsettling idea of convergence. At first, detectives were torn on whether this abductor was driven purely by a twisted fixation by proxy, specifically targeting the high-profile news anchor Savannah Guthrie, or if he was just a cold-blooded local prowler who spotted an easy mark in an elderly woman living solo on a silent block. McCrary is convinced the ugly reality is actually a fatal blend of those two scenarios. Under this chilling convergence model, the masked perpetrator is likely someone who is already nursing a poisonous, media-fueled obsession with the renowned Guthrie clan. But rather than staying a passive spectator watching from the couch, this unhinged stalker managed to uncover a major gap in the family's security armor. He figured out that while the celebrity daughter was locked down behind armed security teams, her aging mother was residing totally on her own with zero protection down in Tucson. The criminal managed to fuse his warped fascination with icy, tactical planning. He understood clearly that he had located the ultimate soft target. That lethal mix of desire and opportunity is likely what tipped the scales, compelling him to drag his sick fantasy out of his head and manifest it as a brutal reality during the witching hour. The scariest part of this unfolding tragedy isn't limited to the violence inside the home on February 1st. It is actually about the suspect's movements right after the fact. Experts are betting the farm that this methodical offender didn't just evaporate. On the contrary, he almost definitely slid right back into his daily grind. He is likely blending in perfectly, posing as a boring neighbor, a steady employee, or a typical relative. That is precisely why the FBI is issuing such a frantic call for civilian help right now. Detectives simply cannot crack this puzzle without eyes on the street. Agents are begging folks to scrutinize the males in their inner circles. They are zeroing in on anyone who showed abrupt, bizarre shifts in their standard schedule, coinciding closely with the date of the abduction. Did an acquaintance unexpectedly call out sick or bail on long-term commitments? Or did they totally go off the grid from their usual hangouts right after February 1st? Additionally, police want to hear about anyone showing a disturbing, fanatical focus on Savannah Guthrie or her relatives, or even a fixation on the breaking news reports covering this manhunt. The perpetrator is shouldering a heavy burden, and the stress is bound to cause crack. Someone definitely knows who he is and has surely spotted these odd, out-of-character mood swings over the past couple of weeks. To motivate that key witness to come forward and spill the beans, officials have drastically raised the ante. The cash bounty for any solid, vetted tip leading to Nancy Guthrie's rescue and the abductor's arrest has jumped to a massive $1,200,000. That fortune is sitting there for the one soul gutsy enough to speak up. The relatives are agonizing over the lack of leads. And the clock is ticking for an 84-year-old lady who relies on a pacemaker and daily meds to stay alive. If you spotted anything off kilter, can identify the bag, or know a guy acting weird since the 1st of February, you need to move fast. Don't second guess yourself or think your info is too minor to matter. You are urged to reach the FBI immediately by dialing their hotline at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Or you can go straight to the investigators at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Every second counts in a high-stakes abduction case like this. It takes a village to recover this missing senior and guarantee that the savage animal responsible receives the harsh penalty he has earned. We are grateful that you stuck around for today's comprehensive case file. The backing you give us is what allows this channel to reveal the secrets concealed within these nightmares. If you got something out of this coverage, go ahead and follow the show and pass the link along. Keep your guard up, remain aware, and until we meet again. We have a major update breaking right now concerning the horrific kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. She is the 84-year-old mother of TV host Savannah Guthrie and was snatched from her house in Tucson at 2 a.m. on February 1st, though for weeks everyone assumed it was just a robbery gone bad. Now, however, leading criminal experts from the FBI have officially shut down that original theory. They claim this crime was planned down to the second, meaning the attacker wasn't looking for valuables. He was hunting for Nancy herself. That terrifying announcement completely flips the script on what we thought we knew and forces us to ask a single burning question. Why would anyone deliberately target a frail 84-year-old woman living on her own who depends on a pacemaker just to survive? Just how sick and twisted is the actual motivation fueling this tragic situation? Right now, we are going to expose the incredibly disturbing answers which authorities have just laid out for the whole world to see. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was taken from her home in Tucson in the middle of the night, and the people who love her are still waiting for her to come home. The lesson of this case is not about fear. It is about attention. The warning signs were always there. We simply have to choose to see them. Elderly people living alone are not invisible. They are our neighbors, our family members, our community. Their safety is a shared responsibility, and it starts with checking in. If you know someone who suddenly changed their routine around February 1st, disappeared from their usual places, or acted strangely after the abduction, that detail matters. Do not stay silent. If you sold or traded a 2.5-liter Ozark Trail backpack in the weeks before the crime, you may hold a piece of evidence that breaks this case open. You may not even know what you witnessed. Think about the service workers who have entered your home or the homes of people you love. Most are trustworthy, but one wrong person with access can change everything. Awareness costs nothing. Talk to the seniors in your neighborhood. Offer to help set up a simple security camera. Walk by their house. A small act of presence can be the difference between safety and tragedy. If your instincts tell you something is wrong about a person in your circle, do not dismiss it. Predators rely on our silence and our politeness. One phone call to the FBI could bring Nancy home. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff is also accepting information. A reward of $1.2 million is waiting for the one person brave enough to speak up. Communities are strongest when people look out for each other. Every major break in a case like this has come from a neighbor, a witness, someone who noticed something small and chose to report it. Nancy Guthrie relies on daily medication and a pacemaker. Every hour that passes matters. The urgency is real, and the power to act belongs to all of us, not just the investigators. She lived alone on a quiet street, depended on a pacemaker to survive, and had no security system watching over her details that meant nothing to most people, but everything to one predator. She is someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone who deserves to come home. If you see something, say something. The next call could be the one that brings her back. For weeks, the world assumed this was a robbery gone wrong, a simple, tragic mistake by a panicked intruder who stumbled into the wrong house. But elite FBI profilers looked closer and saw something far more disturbing, a crime planned down to the second, with one specific target in mind. The attacker struck at 2 a.m. when the block was silent and every neighbor was asleep, not the timing of a thief, but the timing of someone who had been watching and waiting. A $1 million reward was announced and completely ignored because this was never about money. It was about control, obsession, and power over someone else's life. In one night, everything changed. A woman who had lived her final years in quiet peace became the target of a cold and calculated attack because no one had connected the warning signs in time. Investigators now believe the attacker may have once stood inside her home as a repairman, a delivery driver, or a landscaper, someone she had every reason to trust. He studied her routines, mapped her home, and confirmed she had no dog, no alarm, no one to hear her call for help. He turned ordinary access into a weapon.